The alien empire of Orcs was older than most stars. Its cities floated above glowing oceans. Its fleets ruled trade routes across the galaxy. And at its center sat the queen. She was not cruel. She was not kind. She was precise, calm, and feared. Every word she spoke changed destinies. Humans knew the name of Queen Orcs. They whispered it with caution, because no human had ever stood close to her throne and returned unchanged. On this day, a single human envoy stood inside the royal chamber. His name was Elias Kane. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was a diplomat chosen because he listened more than he spoke. The chamber was vast and quiet. Light flowed across alien symbols carved into the walls. Dozens of alien nobles watched from raised platforms, their eyes cold and curious. Elias kept his hand steady. His heart beat fast. Humans were guests here, and guests could become prisoners very easily. The queen entered without sound. She moved with slow confidence. Her presence silenced the room instantly. Elias felt the pressure in his chest. She studied him for a long moment. Not as an enemy, not as an ally, but as something rare. Elias remembered his training. Do not show fear. Do not show pride. Just stand. The queen finally spoke. Her voice was smooth and controlled. She welcomed the human delegation. She spoke of peace and shared survival. The words were expected, formal, careful, but her eyes never left Elias. That was not expected. She dismissed the other humans calmly. One by one they were guided out, until only Elias remained. The doors closed behind him. A low sound echoed through the chamber, sealing them inside. Elias swallowed hard. This was not part of the plan. The queen stepped closer. Her guards did not move. Her advisors stayed silent. The distance between ruler and human vanished. She asked Elias a simple question. She asked if humans valued choice. Elias answered honestly. He said choice was everything to humans. The queen nodded slowly, as if confirming something. She turned away briefly, then faced him again. What she said next shattered the air. Her voice remained calm, but the meaning struck like lightning. She said she would be honored to carry his child. She said it as fact, not request, not command. Honor. Elias felt his heart stop. His thoughts collapsed into silence. The chamber seemed to tilt. He forgot how to breathe. Around them, the court froze. Alien nobles stared in disbelief. Some showed anger, others fear. No one had ever heard such words spoken to a human, especially not by the queen, especially not publicly. This was impossible. Elias finally spoke, his voice barely steady. He asked if this was a test or a threat. The queen shook her head. She said it was neither. She said it was necessity and hope. She explained only one thing. Her species was fading. Birth rates were falling. Science had failed them. Elias tried to understand. He was human. He was small compared to her empire. Why him? The queen looked at him with something new. Not power, not control, but trust. She said humans adapt where others break. Humans survive where logic says they should fail. Humans carry life forward against impossible odds. Elias felt fear, but also something else. Responsibility, the kind that changes a life forever. At this point, dear listener, if you enjoy deep sci-fi stories where humanity faces impossible choices among the stars, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. The queen stepped back slightly. She told Elias he was free to refuse. No punishment, no consequences. The court reacted with shock. Freedom was rare in this empire, especially for humans, especially in matters of legacy. Elias realized something important. This was not about power. This was about survival and the future of two species. Outside the chamber, unknown forces were already watching. Ancient rivals who feared a human influence and would do anything to stop it. Inside, a single human stood before a queen, with a choice no one should ever face. A choice that could change the galaxy. And this was only the beginning. The silence after the queen's words felt heavier than any weapon. Elias remained standing where he was. His mind struggled to catch up with reality. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this moment. The alien nobles began whispering among themselves, their voices sharp and nervous. Some looked at Elias with anger, others with open fear. The queen raised one hand. The whispers died instantly. Her authority was absolute. No one dared challenge her openly. She turned and began walking toward the far side of the chamber. Elias noticed she expected him to follow. After a brief hesitation, he did. Every step echoed loudly in his ears. They stopped before a wide display wall. The surface lit up with moving stars, then with charts, symbols, and fading numbers. The queen spoke without looking at him. She said her species was dying slowly, not from war, not from disease, but from silence in their future. Birth numbers had been falling for generations. Children were becoming rare. Royal bloodlines failed first. Even the queen herself could not produce an heir. Alien science had searched for answers. They used advanced machines and genetic control. They forced solutions where nature resisted. And each failure made the problem worse. Elias listened carefully. He realized something important. The queen was not speaking as a ruler. She was speaking as someone cornered by time. The display changed again. Now it showed images of different species. Dozens of them. All tested, all rejected. The queen explained that alien biology had become fragile, too controlled, too perfect, unable to adapt. Then the screen shifted. Human colonies appeared. Harsh planets, frozen worlds, broken ships. Humans surviving everywhere. She said humans should not exist where they do. By all logic, humanity should have failed. But humans adapted instead. They changed themselves, not their environment. Elias felt a strange mix of pride and fear. He had heard this before in human history. Survival through struggle. Growth through pain. The queen finally turned to face him. Her eyes held no deception. She said she studied humans in secret. For many cycles, she watched how humans formed families. Even in war, even in loss, they rebuilt. She watched how humans valued choice, consent, trust, things her empire had forgotten. Elias asked the question burning in his chest. Why him? Why not a group? Why not control the outcome? The queen answered calmly. She said control was what broke her species. Forced survival created weak life. Chosen survival created strong life. She said Elias was chosen because he represented humanity clearly. Not a warrior, not a ruler, but someone who could say no. That answer unsettled Elias deeply. He realized refusing was part of the test. A test of character, not obedience. Behind them, unseen by Elias, several nobles exchanged dark looks. This decision threatened their power. A human child could change everything. The queen continued. She said the child would not belong to her alone. It would not be a weapon. It would be a bridge. Elias felt pressure building in his chest. The future of two species felt suddenly heavy. He was one human, and the galaxy was watching. He asked what would happen if he refused. The queen answered honestly. Her empire would continue to fade, and her rivals would eventually destroy what remained. This was not a threat. It was reality, the kind that does not need force. Only time. A quiet alarm sounded once, then stopped. The queen paused briefly, then continued as if nothing happened. Far beyond the palace, long-range sensors had detected unusual signals. Someone was listening. Someone always listened. Elias noticed the queen's calm did not break, but he sensed urgency beneath it. Time was shorter than she admitted. She gave him space then. She stepped back. She said he would be given time to think. No guards, no pressure. This confused the court. Power was usually enforced, not offered. But the queen remained firm. Elias was escorted to private chambers. Luxurious, but guarded. As the doors closed behind him, his knees finally weakened. He sat alone, staring at the glowing walls, understanding one terrifying truth. This choice was not about him anymore. It was about what kind of future humanity would accept, and whether survival was worth the cost. Outside his chamber, in shadows between stars, rival empires began to move, because a human had been chosen, and nothing frightened the galaxy more than that. Elias did not sleep. The soft light of the alien chamber shifted slowly from blue to silver. Time passed without meaning. His thoughts moved in endless circles. He stood near the wide, transparent wall. Stars drifted silently outside. Each one felt like a watching eye. The galaxy already knew something had changed. For the first time in his life, Elias felt truly small. Not weak, but exposed. One human standing at the center of a decision too large to hold. His mind returned again and again to the queen's words. Honored to carry your child. Not ordered. Not demanded. Honor. That single word disturbed him more than a threat ever could. Honor meant choice. And choice meant responsibility. On Earth, Elias had lived a simple life. No titles. No legends. Just work, family, and quiet hope. Now his name was being spoken in rooms of power. Alien nobles argued because of him. Empires shifted their attention. And he had done nothing yet. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. The door opened without sound. A single alien guard appeared. She bowed respectfully. She informed Elias that the queen requested his presence. No urgency in her voice. No pressure. But Elias felt his chest tighten anyway. The walk back to the royal chamber felt longer than before. Corridors curved in strange angles. Lights followed his movement, as if the palace itself was watching him think. When he entered, the court was smaller this time. Only trusted advisors and guards remained. The queen stood near the center, not on the throne. That alone was unsettling. Rulers did not leave their thrones without reason. Elias stopped a few steps away and waited. The queen studied his face carefully. She asked him how he felt. Not what he decided, but how he felt. Elias answered honestly. He said he was afraid. Afraid of being used. afraid of losing himself. The court reacted quietly. Some advisors scoffed. Fear was weakness in their culture. But the queen did not interrupt. Elias continued. He said humans feared losing choice more than death. He said if he agreed, it had to mean something beyond survival. The queen listened. Not a single movement betrayed impatience. When Elias finished, she nodded slowly. She said his fear proved why she chose him. Those who feared consequences understood weight. Those who felt nothing destroyed everything. She told him he was not required to answer now. But she asked him one thing. She asked him to look beyond himself, to look at what refusal might cause. At her signal, a display activated. It showed distant star systems, fading colonies, abandoned cities. These were once powerful worlds, now empty, victims of slow extinction, victims of pride and delay. The queen explained that rival empires waited patiently. They watched her people weaken. They prepared to divide what remained. War would come regardless. If the empire fell, humans would be next. Not because of hatred, but because adaptability was always seen as a threat. Elias felt anger rise, not toward the queen, but toward the universe. Why was survival always bought with sacrifice? He asked a difficult question. What would happen to the child? Would it be free, or shaped into a symbol? The queen answered without hesitation. The child would never be owned. Not by her, not by the empire. She said if that promise were ever broken, she would step down. An oath that shocked the court. Gasps echoed softly. Some advisors objected immediately. They warned of instability, of tradition, of chaos. The queen silenced them with a glance. She said an empire unwilling to change deserved to fall. Those words cut deeper than any weapon. Elias realized then, this was not a perfect ruler. This was a desperate one, willing to burn her own throne for a future. Still, he hesitated. He asked what would happen if he said no. Truly no? And walked away. The queen met his gaze. She said she would respect his choice, but others would not. Forces already moved in the dark, as if summoned by her words. A sudden alert flashed briefly, too fast for the court to react fully. But Elias noticed. The queen's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. Danger was closer than she admitted. Time was thinning. Elias felt the weight press harder. This was no longer about comfort or fear. This was about whether choice could survive power. He took a slow breath and did something unexpected. He said he needed to see Earth, to remember who he was. The court erupted in disbelief. Traveling now was risky. Enemies watched every route. But the queen did not refuse. She said knowing oneself was a human strength, and she would not deny it. But she warned him gently. While he searched his heart, others would sharpen their knives. Because hesitation was dangerous. As Elias turned to leave, he felt eyes on his back, not just from the court, but from across the stars. Because the galaxy was no longer asking if he would choose. It was waiting to see how much a human choice was worth. Elias did not return to Earth. The queen's words followed him through every corridor. Time no longer felt like something he owned. It felt borrowed. Instead of preparing a ship, the palace went into quiet lockdown. Not announced, not explained, but felt. Security fields strengthened. Communication channels narrowed. Even the air inside the palace felt tense, like a storm waiting to break. The queen stood alone in the strategy chamber. Stars and fleet movements glowed around her. She listened to reports without expression. But every update confirmed her fear. Someone had leaked the truth. Not the full truth, but enough. Enough to make rivals move. 3 neighboring empires had altered course, their fleets shifting closer. Not openly hostile, but not peaceful either. They were hunting information, testing reactions, searching for weakness. And Elias was now that weakness. In a private chamber, Elias was not alone anymore. 2 guards stood at the entrance. Silent, alert, different from before. He noticed the change immediately. This was no longer protection for a guest. This was protection for an asset. And that realization chilled him. A soft knock came at the door. The queen entered without ceremony. Her posture calm, but her eyes sharp. She told Elias the truth at last. Rival factions within her own empire opposed the union. They feared losing influence. They feared a future they could not control. Some wanted Elias removed quietly. Others wanted him blamed publicly. A few wanted war, because war preserved old power. Elias asked if she trusted her own court. The queen paused before answering. She said trust was earned. And today it was rare. She revealed something darker. There had already been an attempt. Not on Elias, but on her. A failed energy surged near her private chambers. Disguised as a system error. Too precise to be an accident. Someone inside wanted chaos. Elias felt anger rise. Not fear. Anger. Humans understood betrayal too well. He asked why she told him this now. The queen answered honestly. Because if he chose to leave, he needed to understand the cost. Leaving would not make him safe. It would make him hunted. Rivals would see him as a loose end. A risk that needed erasing. The queen said something then that unsettled him deeply. She said the safest place for him might be beside her, in plain sight, where shadows could not hide easily. As if to prove her point, the lights dimmed suddenly, only for a heartbeat, but enough. Guards reacted instantly. Weapons activated. Energy shields rose. The palace shifted into combat readiness. An alarm did not sound. That was worse. Silent alerts meant internal threat. Contained but dangerous. A guard reported a breach attempt in a lower wing. Not successful, but deliberate. A test. The queen's jaw tightened. She looked at Elias and spoke with quiet urgency. This was the future knocking. Elias felt something change inside him. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Clarity replaced it. He realized hesitation was no longer neutral. Every delay gave enemies time. Every silence invited lies. Choice itself had become a weapon. He asked one final question. If he agreed, would the queen protect his freedom, even from herself? She answered without delay. She said yes. She said she would bind that promise in law. In public, that answer mattered. Not because it was comforting, but because it was risky. She was giving up control. Before Elias could respond, a sharp report came through. A traitor had been identified. A high-ranking noble. The noble had been feeding information to rival empires, planning to frame Elias as a manipulator, a human seducer of queens. A story easy to sell. The queen ordered the arrest immediately. No trial yet. No execution. Truth first. Elias watched as power moved around him. Silent, precise, deadly. This was the world he had stepped into. There was no simple exit anymore. As the traitor was taken away, the queen turned to Elias once more. Her voice softer now, almost human. She said the threat was no longer hidden. It was awake, and it would not stop. Not now. Elias looked out through the chamber window, at fleets shifting in distant space, at stars that felt closer than ever. He understood something important. The choice he feared was already being made for him by others. The only question left was whether he would shape it, or let it destroy him. And somewhere far beyond the palace, a message was sent through dark channels. Simple, cold, and clear. The human must not survive. The palace felt different after the traitor was taken away. Corridors once calm now carried quiet urgency. Every guard watched more closely. Every shadow felt alive. Elias was moved to a secured living wing near the queen's chambers. Not as a prisoner, but not as a free guest either. The meaning was clear even without words. He was important now, and importance was dangerous. The queen ordered constant protection, but she also ordered something unexpected. She asked Elias to spend time with her. Not in meetings, not in court. They walked together through the inner gardens of the palace. Artificial sunlight warmed the air. Alien plants glowed softly. Life designed with care and precision. Elias noticed how quiet the queen became here. Away from advisors and screens, she seemed less like a ruler, and more like someone carrying a heavy weight. She asked Elias about Earth. Not about weapons or politics, but about ordinary life. Families, mornings, shared meals. He spoke about small homes, crowded cities, about humans laughing even during hard times, about finding meaning in connection. The queen listened carefully. She admitted her people had lost that. They lived long lives, but lonely ones. She explained how power isolated rulers, how every relationship became a calculation. Trust slowly vanished, until survival replaced joy. Elias realized something important. This was not a queen trying to use him. This was a leader reaching for something her empire forgot. Humanity. Over the next cycles, their bond deepened. Not romantic, not forced, but built on respect and honesty. They shared meals prepared to suit both species. They discussed philosophy, survival, choice. Yet danger never left. Reports arrived daily. Rival fleets repositioning. False rumors spreading across neutral systems. Some stories painted Elias as a manipulator. Others called him a symbol of corruption. The narrative was being shaped by enemies. Slowly, carefully, the queen chose not to respond immediately. She waited. She watched. She learned from human patience. One night cycle, alarms flared briefly again. A drone was detected near the outer shield, destroyed before it reached the palace. But its message was clear. Someone wanted the queen to feel unsafe. Someone wanted her to react. Fear was the goal, and fear made mistakes. Elias offered something unexpected. He suggested openness, not silence, not secrecy. He explained how humans faced fear by sharing truth, how hiding allowed lies to grow, how sunlight weakened shadows, even dangerous ones. The queen hesitated. Open truth meant losing control of the story, but control had already failed her species. She knew that now. At the next council gathering, she stood before nobles and commanders and announced her decision publicly. Without waiting for permission, she declared that a human alliance would shape the future of the empire. That survival required adaptation. not isolation, and that Elias Kane stood under her protection. The chamber erupted. Some shouted in protest. Others stood frozen. History was breaking in front of them. One noble accused Elias openly, claiming he had influenced the queen, that he threatened tradition, that he weakened the empire. Elias stepped forward before guards could react. His voice calm but firm. He said humans did not conquer by force. They survived by cooperation. He said fear of change destroyed more empires than enemies ever did. Silence followed. Not agreement, but consideration. The queen watched him closely. This was the first time he spoke publicly, not as a symbol, but as himself. After the council, she thanked him privately, not as a ruler, but as a person. She admitted something rare. She said she was afraid of losing her empire, and afraid of losing herself to fear. Elias understood then. The bond between them was no longer political. It was shared responsibility, a choice to stand together. Far from the palace, rival leaders watched the broadcast. Some reacted with anger, others with concern. Plans changed. Assassination was no longer enough. They would need something bigger, something that would force the queen's hand. Deep in hostile space, a fleet powered its weapons openly, no longer hiding, no longer patient. The message was sent across encrypted channels. If the Union moved forward, war would follow, no matter the cost. Back in the palace, as Elias looked out at the stars again, he felt the weight of what was coming. This bond he had formed was now a line drawn in space. And once a line was drawn, the galaxy always tested it. War did not arrive with explosions. It arrived with silence. Across the empire, communication delays appeared. Trade routes slowed. Navigation errors increased. Small problems that looked accidental. The queen recognized the pattern immediately. This was not a military attack. This was psychological war. A battle meant to exhaust before striking. Elias watched as advisors argued endlessly, each suggestion more cautious than the last. Fear crept into every discussion, exactly as the enemy wanted. The queen ended one council session early. She dismissed everyone except Elias. When they were alone, her control finally cracked. She admitted the enemy was smarter than expected. They were not trying to defeat her fleets. They were trying to turn her people against her, to make her seem reckless. Rumors spread fast. Some claimed the human was a curse. Others said the queen had lost her reason. Fear always needed a target. Elias felt guilt press on his chest. This chaos followed him everywhere. On Earth, now among the stars. He offered to leave publicly, to remove the excuse, to give the empire peace, even if it cost him everything. The queen refused immediately. She said retreat would confirm every lie. That fear only grew when fed, and she would not rule through cowardice. Instead, she proposed something dangerous, a direct address to the empire. Not scripted, not filtered. Advisors protested loudly. One mistake could collapse authority. One wrong word could spark rebellion. But the queen remained firm. She said rulers lost power when they stopped speaking truth, and she would not hide anymore, even if it ended her reign. Elias helped her prepare, not with strategy, but with honesty. He told her how humans spoke during crisis. Speak plainly, acknowledge fear, offer purpose, never lie. When the broadcast began, every major system tuned in, not because they trusted her, but because they feared what she might say. The queen appeared without armor, without symbols of dominance, just herself, standing alone. She spoke of decline, of mistakes, of pride that blinded her people. Gasps echoed across countless worlds. No ruler admitted weakness. That was forbidden, unthinkable. Then she spoke of Elias, not as a savior, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. She said humanity reminded her species what they lost. Connection, choice, hope. She warned of the coming war, not with drama, but with clarity. She named the threat without exaggeration. Finally, she gave her people a choice. Stand together and adapt, or fracture and be conquered. No lies, no promises of easy victory. The signal ended. Silence followed across the stars. Then reactions began to pour in. Some worlds declared loyalty immediately. Others went quiet. A few openly rejected her rule. Lines were drawn everywhere. The enemy responded faster than expected. They released stolen data, edited messages, false recordings meant to discredit the queen and Elias. But something unexpected happened. The lies did not spread as planned. Too many had already heard the truth. Fear lost its grip. Elias realized this was the real battle. Not ships, not weapons, but belief. The queen smiled for the first time in days. A small, tired smile. She said humans were dangerous allies, because they taught hope. Yet victory was not complete. Enemy fleets still moved, still gathered, still prepared for force. A final message arrived from rival leaders. Cold and direct. Surrender the human, or face destruction. The queen did not hesitate. She deleted the message publicly. in front of her council. Fearlessly, Elias felt something shift inside him. This was no longer about survival. This was about legacy. What kind of future deserved to exist? As fleets aligned and defenses activated, the Queen and the humans stood side by side, not as ruler and guest, but as partners in choice. The war of minds had begun, and the galaxy was watching to see whether honesty could stand against fear. The first shot of the war was never fired. It was decided. Enemy fleets crossed the border, weapons charged, shields glowing like artificial suns. The galaxy held its breath. Inside the command chamber, no one shouted. No panic spread, only focused movement. A calm born from certainty. The Queen stood at the center, Elias beside her. Not behind, not protected. This image alone traveled fast across the networks. A ruler and a human standing together. No chains, no fear. Enemy commanders expected hesitation. They expected negotiation. They expected surrender. They received none. The Queen transmitted a single message, clear and open. She would not trade a life for peace. She would not betray choice to survive. If war was forced upon her people, they would face it united, not as an empire of the old kind, but as something new. The response was immediate. Enemy fleets advanced. Energy signatures spiked. The final moment approached. Elias felt fear at last, pure and human, but he did not step back. He stayed. He understood now. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was choosing despite it. And this choice mattered. As the first enemy weapons powered fully, something unexpected happened. Several neutral fleets moved, not to attack, but to block. They positioned themselves between the empires. Weapons down, shields up. Worlds that had listened to the Queen's broadcast had decided. They would not support fear. They would not support extinction. They chose evolution. The enemy commanders hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. In war, seconds were lifetimes. And doubt was fatal. A second wave of allies arrived. Not military giants, but many. Enough. The message was clear. This would not be a quick victory. This would be a long, costly war. And the old empires feared long wars. Slowly, enemy fleets powered down. Not retreating, but pausing, reconsidering. The Queen did not press the advantage. She did not threaten. She did not boast. She waited. Minutes passed. Then a transmission arrived. A request for negotiation. On equal terms. History shifted in that moment. Not because of weapons, but because fear failed. In the days that followed, treaties were signed. Borders redrawn. Alliances formed. Not perfect, but alive, adaptive, hopeful. Elias became a symbol without trying to be. Not of power, but of choice. Of saying no when surrender was easy. The Queen kept her promise. She bound protections into law. For him. For any future born of unity. The empire changed slowly. Painfully. But truly. Traditions softened. Connection returned. Families mattered again. Life meant more than survival. Meaning returned. One cycle later. In a quiet chamber far from the throne. The Queen stood beside Elias once more. No guards nearby. She thanked him. Not for saving her empire, but for reminding her why it was worth saving. Elias smiled. He said humans did not conquer stars. They learned to share them. As he looked out at the galaxy, he knew the future would not be easy. There would be conflict, loss, but there would also be choice. And as long as choice existed, so did hope. Somewhere among the stars, a new story began, not of empires and war, but of a future chosen, together.